This is a case about brutal murders that investigators from two countries couldn't solve for 30 years. Only modern technology managed to identify the killer, but even after that, the path to punishing the guilty was not over. The trial of the criminal became unique, and the murderer is considered the first person in the world convicted by a jury with certain evidence. Subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to get new video updates. Saanich, British Columbia, Canada. 20-year-old Jay Cook and 18-year-old Tanya Van Cuylenborg met in high school, and by November 1987, they had been dating for about 6 months. The girl decided to postpone college and save money for a trip to the Netherlands, where her paternal relatives lived. The boy worked at a pizzeria and on a fishing boat. One day, Jay's father needed to pick up $750 worth of furnace parts in Seattle, and he suggested that his son and his girlfriend carry out this task and travel at the same time. On November 18, 1987, the couple embarked on a nighttime trip from their town to Seattle in the father's bronze-colored Ford Club minivan. The young people took a ferry from Victoria, Canada, to Port Angeles, Washington. After that, they drove southeast on Highway 101 to Bremerton, where they used a second ferry to get to Seattle. Witnesses were found who saw them boarding this ferry. The couple was supposed to return home the next day, November 19th, but that didn't happen. Their parents were also worried that the kids hadn't even called them about the delay. Eventually, on November 20th, the young people were declared missing. 6 days after the beginning of the journey, on November 24th, near Alger in Skagit County, a passerby found the body of Tanya Van Cuylenborg in a ditch by a rural road. She was undressed from the waist down, and her hands were tied with zip ties. It was evident that she had been raped and then shot with a .380 caliber bullet in the back of the head. Given that the girl was found alone and her boyfriend had vanished along with the van, detectives assumed that he was responsible. The parents of both Jay and Tanya were sure that this was not the case. The next day, November 25th, Tanya's wallet with her ID card, a medical glove, a box of .380 caliber ammunition, the keys to their car, and other items were found near the porch of Essie's Tavern, close to the Greyhound bus station in Bellingham, which is about 14 miles from the location where the deceased's body was discovered. A couple of blocks away from the girl's belongings, the couple's minivan was found in the Diamond parking lot. Inside, the most crucial piece of evidence in the case was discovered: Tanya's black pants stained with semen and a blanket with bloodstains. Also in the car were gloves and zip ties of the same type used to tie Tanya's hands, various receipts. Among them were a gas purchase receipt from a station between Port Angeles and Bremerton, as well as a ferry ticket to Seattle, confirming witness statements and the investigation's version of the young people's route. Among the items found in the van, there was no sign of Jay's green canvas backpack and jacket, nor was Tanya's Minolta X700 camera that she had brought with her on the trip. After almost 3 years of searching, investigators managed to find the lens from that camera. It was in a pawn shop in Portland, Oregon, 260 miles from the place of disappearance. There was still no news from the missing young man. In 1986, on November 26th, was a national holiday in the United States, Thanksgiving Day. It was on this day that a pheasant hunter's dog discovered the body of 20-year-old Jay Cook under the high bridge over the Snoqualmie River, south of the town of Monroe. He had been severely beaten with stones, and the cause of death was strangulation with a rope to which 2 dog collars were attached. A napkin and a pack of Camel cigarettes were also stuffed into his throat. The young man's body was found approximately 62 miles from his girlfriend's corpse. Investigators noted that a specific method was used in the murder of the young people, which most likely revealed the killer as either someone who had previously had trouble with the law or someone who was well acquainted with police methods for another reason. What they exactly meant remained a secret of the investigation. Detective Robert Gibo from the Seattle Police Department hypothesized that the gloves and zip ties were left by the criminal intentionally to mock the police, as he was confident that he had left no fingerprints or evidence that could point to him, and that was the killer's main miscalculation. In 1987, when these monstrous crimes occurred, it was the very dawn of using DNA material in criminal investigations. Nevertheless, detectives were able to collect the necessary material for analysis from the girl's genes. Subsequently, several attempts were made to find a match in criminal databases, but none of them yielded positive results. A few months after the murders, the victims' parents began receiving greeting cards with graphic descriptions of the murders of their children. The writer called himself the Killer. The postcards had postmarks from Seattle, New York, and Los Angeles. The police could not identify who sent them, but it was known that it was the same person. Only 23 years later, the identity of the person who tormented the families became known. For many years, there was no progress in this case. It seemed that the perpetrator was either serving a sentence before it became mandatory to include criminals' DNA profiles in databases, or had no problems with the law at all. In 2010, it was announced that the author of the postcards sent to the victims' families had been identified. He turned out to be a 78-year-old Canadian man who was traveling through the United States at the time. The man had mental health issues and had no connection to the murders. In 2018, the police turned to Parabon Nanolabs, a company that specializes in studying DNA using the most advanced methods. First, using DNA, a portrait of the killer was created at different ages. Immediately after that, hundreds of messages started coming into the police departments of different states. Then, the DNA analysis result was uploaded to the GEDmatch genealogical database. It turned out that 2 of the suspects' cousins had previously uploaded their profiles to the database. One of them, Chelsea Rustad, would later attend the trial, supporting the victims' families. The cousins' family lines led to the family of William Talbott Sr. and Patricia Peters. They had 4 children and only 1 son, William Jr. By that time, he was working as a truck driver and lived in SeaTac, Washington. To follow all formalities and unequivocally establish the man's connection to the unsolved case, the police decided to discreetly obtain his DNA material. A detective was watching William and one day saw him throw away a coffee cup. The analysis of the saliva left on it confirmed the scientist's conclusions. On May 18, 2018, the Snohomish County Sheriff announced that William Earl Talbott II was arrested on charges of murdering Tanya Van Cuylenborg. Police were waiting for confirmation of Talbott's arrest near the homes of each of his close relatives. Detectives immediately began questioning his family members. Soon, a rather sinister portrait of the man they suspected in the double murder emerged. Talbott's younger sister, Melena Grail, told them that he had once beaten her with his boots on, and she even had to call the police. She also recalled how, at the age of 11, her brother had pushed their father, who was disabled after a car accident. The father, William Earl Talbott Sr., remembered his son threatening to run him over with a car as soon as he got his driver's license at 16 years old. Another sister, Inga Ruth, was beaten by him so severely that he broke her coccyx, after which she had to recover in the hospital. The incident occurred because William wanted to turn up the radio volume, and she closed the door to change her clothes. William broke down the door and brutally assaulted his sister. At that time, she was 15 years old, and he was 17. When Inga was 11 years old, her brother even raped her. William's cruelty extended to animals as well. Once, he threw their cat Nikki into a well. The father had to rescue her and sterilize the well. The teenager's parents sought help from specialists to somehow curb their son's aggression, but apparently, their efforts were unsuccessful. Eventually, Talbott became estranged from his family and did not maintain any relationship with his relatives for about 20 years. Although initially, William was charged only with the murder and rape of Tanya, soon other charges were brought against him. Investigators believed that most likely Cook and Van Cuylenborg met someone during their second ferry crossing and decided to give the hitchhiker a ride, who turned out to be the 24-year-old William Talbott. During the investigation, the suspect refused to give any testimony. In his appeal, he explained the presence of traces of his blood on the victim's blanket by the fact that anyone can get cut and leave their trace anywhere. William's lawyers explained the presence of his sperm on Tanya's pants by claiming that they had a consensual relationship. However, before the verdict was announced, Talbott categorically denied the charges, arguing that he was a completely non-aggressive person. The level of violence in this is something that I can't even comprehend. I've gone all my life as a very passive person, never raising my hand towards anyone. I rarely even get angry," the defendant said. In June 2019, he was found guilty on 2 counts, first-degree aggravated murders, and sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. This trial is considered the world's first jury verdict when detectives identified a suspect using forensic genealogy and open DNA databases. It seemed that the story of the double murder would end there. However, things turned out to be much more complicated. On December 7, 2021, the verdict was overturned by an appellate court due to the bias of one of the jurors. It turned out that during the jury selection, one woman, when asked if she could be impartial in considering the case, said she would try. Since her mother had once been a victim of domestic violence, the juror believed that if the case involved violence against a woman, it might prevent her from being completely objective. Talbott's lawyers used this circumstance when filing an appeal. The prosecution was not willing to give up and took the case to the Washington State Supreme Court, which decided to review it. Meanwhile, William Talbott remained in the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. Tanya's father, William, passed away in 1997 at the age of 61, never learning the name of his daughter's killer. Her mother, Jean-Lorraine, died in 2020 at the age of 87. Tanya's brother John became a lawyer and a well-known person in their hometown. He said that their parents never fully recovered from the tragedy, and for several years, he couldn't listen to music or watch movies, as happiness seemed like a betrayal of his sister's memory. Jay Cook's parents, Gordon and Leona, are still alive. They, along with his sister Laura Banstra and her husband, took an active part in the case, attending court hearings and press conferences. On December 23, 2022, the Washington State Supreme Court reinstated 2 aggravated murder convictions for William Talbott. The High Court unanimously rejected the defense's arguments that Talbott should be granted a new trial due to one juror's alleged bias, concluding that defense attorneys could have dismissed the juror ahead of the trial but opted not to. What do you think? Has justice been served in this case?